Welcome. This is Bill Donahue at Discerning Truths, and I'm here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Pacific time, talking to you about Jesus, right? and Monday and Wednesdays we're in a book of the Bible. Right now I'm in Daniel. We're getting near the end of Daniel. I'm going to do chapter 11 today, and we will finish on Monday with the book of Daniel. But I just will figure out what we're going to do on that. And on Friday I teach stuff that is related to Christianity, sometimes just barely related, right? But I've been going through this week some books I wanted to read. I'm going to finish the Zondervan Counterpoint series, where they give you 3 views on that, 4 views on this, or whatever, and review those books, see where I think they got things right, where they got them wrong, whose opinion that I side with in those books, if any. And Friday, I'm going to go over a book that's not part of that series, but it was inspired by that series. It was called 5 Views on Inerrancy, that I did a long time ago. And one of the positions in there was from somebody that didn't hold the Bible to be inerrant, meaning without error. And without error in what sense, and whatever. He just thought that was a bad term, and his name's Peter Enns. And he thought the Bible position is better understood in view of the incarnation of Jesus. And I thought that was an interesting idea. Didn't know enough about it. So I'm going to review his book called The Inspiration and Incarnation on Friday. So that's where we're going. But until then, we're going to get into Daniel 11. And I always want to be done on time because my friend Michael in California prays for the nation on Wednesday. And he comes on an hour after I start, so I want to be done. So with that, I'm going to jump into the study, and then when the study's over, I'll come back out and talk to you again. So welcome to everybody out there. And what I've been trying to do with Daniel 11, well, all the book as we're going through Daniel, is I do these introductions trying to give you, and I'm really focusing on intertextuality, how they're doing it. And what's happening is Daniel is really drawn on Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Isaiah. And when he pulls their imagery from those prophets forward, he often reinterprets them, their prophetic traditions, into a apocalyptic and end times framework in that what's going on here. So we have that happening. But when we get to Daniel 11, what is going to happen is that he's going to pull out echoes and not apply it necessarily apocalyptically, but in a near future history for Israel. So his sequence, a detailed sequence of kings and conflicts, and the king in the north and the king in the south, in 11:2-20, right? And what he says, the angel tells him, now I'm going to show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise after Persia, and a 4th will be far richer than them. Okay? Now, we've been doing Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, right? So you go, well, if it's after 3 kings after Persia, you got Greece, Rome, and who? But no, it's 3 more kings in Persia. And he deals with that, and that one's going to be richer than its own. And this is Artaxerxes. This is Xerxes the first. Okay, he's known as the richest, and he's the king from the book of Esther. And he's going to draw from Jeremiah's prophecies about successive empires and foreign domination, where God appoints kings over nations. So he's not really taking Jeremiah's prophecy and reinterpreting it, but he's just bringing it into the same kind of imagery into broader eschatological timelines. And then it portrays the rising and falling of kings, right? In verses 3-4, then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion. But as soon as he arises, his kingdom will be broken. This alludes to Ezekiel's wise figure who in exile in Ezekiel 14:4 and 14:20 and 28:3, and as Isaiah's apocalyptic oracles on empires, which are chapters 24-27 in Isaiah. These are like thematic echoes. They're not direct quotes or paraphrases or that kind of stuff. It's these thematic um, themes that are drawn on, and Daniel's going to pull on that imagery. And what happens is with all these writers in the Bible, when they do this, they quote, paraphrase, draw allusions, or even pull echoes from earlier revelation. They write as if their audience is going to catch those echoes and those allusions. And sometimes they're not easy. A direct quote, if you're familiar with the text, is easy. A paraphrase, you can kind of catch. An allusion, a little harder, you know. And then an echo, you really have to be immersed in the thing to pull them out. So that's why I'm trying to take time to point them out to you. Now, later biblical writers, like the New Testament, engage in Daniel 11 through explicit allusions in thematic adaptations. Thematic is echoes, right? Often in eschatological context, end times. The most prominent is the abomination and desolation from Daniel 9, right? Motif in the New Testament, but it transposes. In Daniel 11, historical desecration under Antiochus Epiphanes, right, is reinterpreted typologically in the end times discourse. So these battles between the king in the north and the king in the south, they have historical context. It's supremely accurate historical context. But because Daniel's been doing these things and then bringing them out in the end times view, we are interpreting them that they have application in the end times. In Daniel 11:31, it says, forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and the fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering, and they shall set up an abomination and make desolate. Okay, so this is, again, the reference to the abomination and desolation, which they understood happened under Antiochus Epiphanes, right? And then Jesus in Matthew 24:15 says, so when you see the abomination and desolation taken, so Jesus makes it future, even though it had been fulfilled in the past. So this is that multiple layers of fulfillment that we see in the Bible. And now, was that fulfilled in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple, or is it still future to that? Okay, some people hold that that ended it. I'm not one of them. The book of Revelation alludes to Daniel 11 empire's conflict in the desecration themes in Revelation 13 verses 1 to 10, with the beast echoing Daniel's kings, though more clustered with Daniel 7, right? This creates a dialogue where Daniel 11's north-south, the kings of the north-south wars, are transposed into cosmic battles between spiritual entities, right? And that's how this is being used. And those, what do you call it, echoes and allusions and those kind of things that help us understand Daniel's meaning when we get into unclear passages, right? But watch what happens. This is in verse 1. He starts out and he says, as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up and confirm and strengthen him. And sometimes the chapter and verse breaks in the Bible drive me absolutely nuts, because this is clearly part of chapter 10. Okay? The speaker's still Gabriel. He's recounted that it is only he and Michael that have tasked with battling the disobedient celestial beings, right? Remember in Deuteronomy 32:8, God set over the nations sons of God. Non-canonical books like Enoch and Jubilees call them the watchers. Daniel calls them the watchers, or holy ones. They were set over the nations. And many of those celestial beings, called Elohim, which we translate as gods, okay? And Elohim is a type of being, a celestial being. Yahweh, Jehovah, is an Elohim. But no other Elohim is like Yahweh or Jehovah, because he's the uncreated creator. But they are celestial beings. They are there. Even disembodied spirits, like when the Witch of Endor brings up the spirit of the deceased, she says, I have seen the Elohim. and she's seeing somebody that doesn't belong in this realm or is not normally in this realm seen. So when we translate it as gods and we impute into the word gods all the meaning that we attribute to God, it sounds like we're talking about polytheism. We are not. The Bible is monotheistic. There is one God who was before all. He created all. All other stuff came from him. But he created other celestial beings that are called Elohim. And he compares himself. He says, none of them compared to me. They can't be. There's none of them can stand beside me. None of them were before me and after me. They're not here. God's not comparing himself to imaginary creatures. He made other gods. And these other beings called Elohim, right? And that's why I try to call them celestial beings instead of gods, because I think it's clearer for us. He made them. He set them over the nations. And many of them rebelled against Jehovah, Yahweh, however you want to pronounce those 4 letters. And then they rebelled. And many of them sought worship for themselves. They become the gods of the Old Testament, right? Now, Gabriel adds in this discourse from the last chapter, as for me, to describe his role in this struggle, in the first year of Darius the Mede, which is another name for Cyrus the Great. I went over all the different theories of why there's 2 different names here. I think one's his throne name, right? And but I think they're the same. Some people think they're 2 different people, and Darius is a subordinate of Cyrus. I think the most likely example is that Darius is a throne name for Cyrus the Great, and that he stood up and confirmed his strength. So why they decided to then make this in the next chapter makes no sense to me, right? But I'm just explaining to you. This is why I try to take at least a chapter at a time. And then, even then, sometimes the thought is broken up. And in verses 2-4, it says, and now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a 4th shall be far richer than them all. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up against the kingdom of Greece. And then a mighty king shall arise, who will rule with great dominion and do as he wills. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom will be broken and divided to the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his posterity, not to his children, nor according to the authority to which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these. Okay, so after Cyrus the Great, herein called Darius the Mede, right? 3 more kings shall arise in Persia. They were Cambrius the second. Sometimes the next king is called Bardia, and sometimes Smyrtis. Same person, and then Darius the first. Okay. Now this Darius the first is not the Darius he's talking about, Darius the Mede. Okay. And it says, and the 4th will be richer than them all. This king is called Xerxes the first, or Ashur-Haris in some things. See, it's not just the Bible where there's 2 names for the same person. The name Xerxes the first is closely associated with kings of immense wealth, right? And for many centuries, there was the saying, he was rich like Xerxes. Now, Xerxes tries to invade Greece, and he's a king who marries Esther in the book of Esther, right? This invasion of Greece is what Alexander the Great is going to use as his reason for attacking the Persian Empire. Look how exacting this prophecy is. This is why critics of the Bible who don't believe in prophecy read this and they're going to go, this is way too accurate to be written in advance. Somebody claiming to be Daniel must have wrote it after the fact, right? Now, Xerxes I was profoundly known for his immense wealth, and he frequently used to display his power and splendor as a ruler of it's called the Achaemenid Persian Empire, and it spanned 27 provinces from India to Ethiopia. He controlled unparalleled resources. Okay? In the book of Esther describes Xerxes hosting a 180-day banquet for his nobles, specifically to showcase the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor of his glory and majesty. Okay, so Daniel predicts that this fourth king is going to be richer than all the other kings. The fourth king's richer than all the other kings, right? But following his military campaigns in Greece, Xerxes invested heavily in completing and expanding the royal city of Persepolis, including constructing his own palace, twice the size of his father's palace. Okay? And the gates of all nations and the hall of 100 columns. He went on a big old building spree. And while Greek sources often focused on his failures in Greece, right? Because history is written by the victors, right? So from the Grecian point of view, they're highlighting what a failure he was. But when you read it from other one, right? They still even include his decadent lifestyle and his luxuries and his richness and all that stuff. So even his critics acknowledged he was immensely wealthy. And his spending on luxury and infrastructure, particularly the costly invasion of Greece, was so extensive that it strained his empire's resources. When an empire spends more than it has, it tends to fall, right? You know, and I mean, for those of us living in this particular day and have watched this happen in the nation, most of us are Americans here. I know I have Canadians and some other people listen to me, but if you're an American and you've lived most of your life where this nation has spent way more than it has, and, you know, been warning after warning, you keep this up, you're going to fall, right? Same things happen to Xerxes. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. And as soon as he is arisen, his kingdom shall be broken, right? Remember this part. This is Alexander the Great. And after almost unbelievable conquest, which toppled empires before him. Alexander's conquest is described as a horse conquering nations with the horse's feet not even touching the ground, because it was so fast how quickly he conquered the ancient world back then. But he died in Babylon, having no heirs, and his kingdom was divided among 4 generals. But none of those kingdoms were anywhere near as powerful as Greece under Alexander, right? What's it say? You know, that his kingdom's going to be broken and divided among 4 winds of heaven. It's divided among towards 4 of his things, not of his posterity, nor according to his authority. It doesn't have the spiritual power that Alexander has. These stories are telling you that there was a celestial being empowering Alexander the Great. And that celestial being did not empower any of the 4 generals that took over his thing. You wonder why. What happened to that celestial being, right? The prophecy is told in exacting detail and corroborated by secular history. The prophecies in Daniel chapter 10 to 12 are so exacting that many Bible critics claim they must have been written after the events occurred, because they can't believe that God could have told Daniel what would happen and make it come to pass. But to me, that's the easy thing to believe, right? So here's these battles. Then the king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger, and he shall rule. And his authority shall be of great authority. After some years he shall come and make an alliance with the daughter of the king of the south. Shall come to the king of the north and make an agreement. But she shall not retain her strength of her arm, and he and his arm shall not endure. And she shall be given up, and her attendants who fathered her, he who supported her in those times. Now, arm in Hebrew sometimes can be branch, indicating your child, right? And so the king of the south, who's Ptolemy Soter, right? He established a powerful Egyptian kingdom, nowhere near as powerful as Alexander's Greece, but it was powerful. One of his princes, named Seleucus Nectar, he was a former subordinate to Ptolemy, who established a greater empire in Syria. That daughter of the king of the south is Bernice, and the daughter of Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, right, who's taken off after Ptolemy Soter, right? The king of the north is Antiochus II, Theos, the Seleucid ruler. So we know from history who these people are. Bernice was married to Antiochus II to seal a treaty, but upon Ptolemy II, the Philadelphia's guy, his death, Antiochus II abandoned Bernice for his first wife, Laodice, and then Laodice then poisoned Antiochus and Bernice. She killed them both, right? And her child, Bernice's child. So that arm of Bernice and Antiochus doesn't survive, right? And this is exactly what it describes. Now, it's describing it in very poetic language, but historians are looking at it and going, this is exactly what happened. How could Daniel possibly have known? Yeah, because he's being inspired by a God that is not subject to time or space. And from a branch of her roots, one shall arise in his place, and he shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north. And he shall deal with them and shall prevail. And he shall carry off to Egypt their gods and their metal images and their precious vessel of silver and gold. And for some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north. Then later shall come into the realm of the king of the south. The latter shall come into the realm of the king of the south and shall return to his own land. So the latter is the king of the north, right? This is a little fun here, right? So a branch from her roots, this is Bernice's roots, right, shall arise in his place. This is Ptolemy III, okay, the third pharaoh of the Ptolemaic Egypt. This is 246 to 221 BC. He was the brother of Bernice. The king of the north is Seleucus II, right? I'm going to butcher all these names, but Calnicius. And the Seleucid king, he ruled from Syria from 246 to 226 BC. Ptolemy III marched into Syria in 246 to avenge his sister Bernice's death, right? Conquering Seleucia and dominating the Seleucid forces. He seized 2,500 pagan idols and immense wealth, earning him the title Euergetes, or benefactor. Okay, he brought all this wealth back to Egypt. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods and their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold, is how it's described in the prophecy. But internal revolts in Egypt forced Ptolemy III to return to Egypt, providing a temporary reprieve for the Seleucus Empire. That's Seleucus II. So for some years, they go without battling. They're competing for the same territory, the same wealth, but they're not fighting because they have their own internal struggles. You know, you think, why didn't the Egyptian king just go and finish the battle while he had? Because he had to go home and deal with problems at home. Right? Now, Seleucus II mounted a retaliatory invasion into Egypt, but it failed, leading to a disastrous defeat and a retreat back to Syria. And that's why it says the latter shall come, the latter from the king of the north shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. And even among Bible prophecies, the exacting detail and the precise accuracy of these prophecies is extraordinary. I've read many texts claiming to contain prophecies, Nostradamus, the Quran, Book of Mormon, and I have never seen any prophecy this exacting in their description and fulfillment, right? It's like I always point you to one in Zechariah 11 where it's talking about pay me my good price, the 30 pieces of silver. And when you read it in Zechariah, it seems like a guy just asking for wages. But when you read the text in Zechariah, the transaction happens in the temple and the potter ends up with the money. And then when you see it applied in the New Testament, Judas gets the 30 pieces of silver, realizes that he has betrayed innocent blood, tries to give it back to the Jews, but they can't accept it because it's blood money. So he throws it to them on the floor of the temple. being good Jews, they're not going to leave it on the floor of the temple. And they decide they have to bury strangers. So if they prepay that expense by buying a potter's field, that they're not actually tainting their money with blood money. You see how they're kind of working their way around their thing. So the money gets taken and given to a potter. It's an exact fulfillment of what happened in Zechariah. But you don't, that's the kind of exacting prophecies you have in the Bible. You don't get those with Nostradamus. You get prophecies that like say there's two brothers, one born in the morning and one in the evening. And people go, yeah, that's John and Robert Kennedy. Whoa, there's a jump for me, right? There's a lot of brothers born in the morning and the evening. And then Isaiah 44, 9-10 says, for I am the God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me, declaring for the end from the beginning and from ancient times things not yet done, saying my counsel shall stand and I will accomplish all my purposes. That's the God we worship. A God who declares from the beginning what the end will be and makes it come to pass. And that's what you're seeing in Daniel, that kind of accuracy. And in verses 10-13 says, his son shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again shall carry the war as far as the fortress. Then the king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the king of the north, and he shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. And when the multitude is taken away, his heart shall be exalted, and he shall cast down 10,000s, but he shall not prevail. For the king of the north shall again raise a multitude greater than the first, and after some years he shall come in with a great army and abundant supplies. So his sons here refers to Seleucus II, right? And then the king of the south refers to Ptolemy Philopator. And one of those sons, the king of the north, is Antiochus III, who's going to invade Egypt with a large army but lose. Ptolemy IV temporarily prevails against the invasion from Antiochus III, right? It says he cast down 10,000. He massacred the army, but he still ends up losing because the army was so large. And Antiochus III returns years later, around 200 BC, with a multitude greater than the first, and he retakes lands previously lost to Ptolemy V. These battles are being described here, described in poetic language. It's not the way we would write history. It's the way the Bible writes history. And it writes it in advance. But scholars look at this and they go, there's nothing like this. Right? In accuracy. In those times, many shall rise up against the king of the south, and the violent among your own people. Who's he talking to? Daniel. The violent among you Jews shall lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they shall fail. And the king of the north shall come and throw a siege works and take a well-fortified city. And the forces of the south shall not stand, even their best troops, for there shall be no strength to stand. But he who comes against them shall do as he wills, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land, the Holy Land, with destruction in his hand. And he shall set his face to come with strength of his whole kingdom, and he shall bring terms of agreement and perform them. And he shall give the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it shall not stand or be his advantage. And afterward he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall capture many of them. But a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Instead, he shall turn his insolence back upon him, and then he shall turn his face back to the fortress of his own land, and he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Okay, a lot of detail here, but I wanted to give you the whole passage, right? Following the death of Ptolemy IV, this is the king of the south, Antiochus III, king of the north, allied with Philip V of Macedon out of Greece. So these are two of the kingdoms that break up out of Alexander's kingdom. They tried to divide the Ptolemaic Empire in Egypt, and the violent among your own people, or rebels among the Jews, also rose up, hoping for independence. But as the text says, they failed, right? And so this is what's going on, what's being described here. And you have to be a history nut like me if you're going to read these other stories that support this. But Antiochus III marched against Egypt and defeated the armed forces of Ptolemy V, culminating in the siege of the city of Sidon in 203 to 202 BC, where he trapped the Egyptian general Scopas. And that's what it says here. The king of the north come and throw a siege work. Sidon is a heavily defended, well-fortified city, right? Tyre and Sidon you're going to hear about in the New Testament, right? Antiochus captured the glorious land, Judea, and firmly established his power there, controlling it with destruction in his hand, military force, right? To gain control of Egypt, Antiochus gave his daughter Cleopatra I, the daughter of women. In marriage, this is not the Cleopatra with Mark Antony Cleopatra, but in the same line, okay? In marriage to the young Ptolemy V, planning to use her to take over. However, she sided with her husband instead of her father, and their plan failed. He gave away his daughter, pimped her out to make a treaty, and then she turned on him. What a surprise, right? The defeat by Rome in Greece of Antiochus was forced to pay heavy reparations and retreated to his own lands. He died in 187 BC while attempting to plunder the temple in Elamias and to pay the Romans. He's actually trying to steal gold from another temple along his way so he can pay the Romans, because he's not strong enough to defeat the Romans. Rome's on its rise, and he's part of a fallen empire. Then in these 8 verses it says, "Then shall arise in his place one shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle. In his place shall rise a contemptible person, to whom royal majesty has not been given. He shall come in without warning and obtain a kingdom by flatteries. Armies shall be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. And from that time that an alliance is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, and he shall become strong with a small people. Without warning he shall come into the richest parts of the province, and he shall do what neither his fathers nor his fathers' fathers have done, scattering among the plunder, spoil, and goods. He shall devise a plan against the strongholds, but only for a time. And he shall stir up his power in the heart against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall wage war, an exceedingly great mighty army, and he shall not stand. For the plot shall be devised against him. Even those who eat his food shall break him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. And as for the 2 kings, their hearts shall be bent on doing evil. They shall speak lies in the same table, but to no avail. And for the end is not yet to be in a time appointed. And he shall return to his land with great wealth, but his heart shall not be set against the holy covenant. And he shall work his will and return to its own land." So the primary figure here, this is Antiochus the fourth, Antiochus Epiphanes. This is the guy who's the model of the Antichrist, right? And with verse 20 acting as the hinge setting, the scene, by describing his predecessor, right? But he's the key person that we're going to pull out of this passage, right? Now I'm going to leave it up so you can look at the verse while we're doing this. In yellow, Seleucus Philopator is the exactor of tribute. He was the older brother of Antiochus IV. He was the one who had the right to the throne. He was forced to pay a massive indemnity to Rome, taxes, heavy taxation, right? And so he just started taxing everything, including the jewel of his kingdom, Judea. He died unexpectedly, not in battle, but by poisoning and intrigue at the hands of his treasurer, Heliodorus. Antiochus Epiphanes is the contemptible person. He did not have a direct claim to the throne, but he took power through flatteries and deceit, maneuvering past Demetrius I as the rightful heir to the throne, but Antiochus ends up getting it. Antiochus IV successfully invades Egypt, the king of the south, and replaced leaders. The Prince of the Covenant likely refers to the Jewish high priest Onias III, who Antiochus deposed and who was murdered around 171 BC. Antiochus invaded Egypt, defeating the army of the nephew of Ptolemy, of his own nephew, who's Ptolemy VI. And the plots shall be devised against him. That's what it's talking about. Refers to a false treaty and negotiation between Antiochus and his nephew. Antiochus went in there pretending to be let's make a deal, let's make a treaty. He had no intention of making a treaty. So these false deals come up, right? And that's what he's describing here. And then, what do you call it? His first successful campaign in Egypt in 169 BC, Antiochus returned north. He stopped in Jerusalem. He was angered by local uprisings, partly due to the intrigue and deposed high priests. He plundered the temple and massacred many Jews. This acts as the turning point in his reign, where he formally sets his heart against the Holy Covenant. Okay? And you can see I'm highlighting these terms in that passage for you, so you can get just how exacting this prophecy is, right? And then in 29 to 35 it says, "At the appointed time he shall return and come into the south, but it shall not be this time as it was before, for ships of Kittim shall come against him. And he shall be afraid and withdraw, and shall turn back, and be enraged, and take action against the Holy Covenant. And he shall turn back and pay his attention to those who forsake the Holy Covenant. Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and the fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering, and they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate." Okay? "He shall seduce with flattery those who violate the covenant. But the people who know their God shall stand firm and take action. And the wise among the people shall make many understand. Though for some days they shall stumble by the sword and the flame, and by captivity and plunder. And when they stumble, they shall receive a little help, and many shall join themselves with them with flattery, and some of the wise shall stumble, and that they may be refined, purified, and made white, until the time of the end, for it still awaits the appointed time." Okay, so we have one appointed time when Antiochus Epiphanes is going to come in, but that's not the end. We're still awaiting the appointed time, right? So there's clear hint here. There's an eschatological. It came in and kicked him out, right? And he was humiliated, because he thinks he's a big old king conquering Egypt, and the Roman came in and go slap your hand, go back home, and by the way, you owe us money for what you did. And so he's mad, and on his way home to Syria, he stops by Jerusalem and sacks it, right? And well, this is fun. I'm disconnecting and reconnecting on Foxhole. The fulfillment of this prophecy is so complete and exacting with the abomination he did, right? They think Antiochus sacrificed a pig and set up a altar to Zeus in the Jewish altar. And that's what Jews understood. They all understood that this prophecy was fulfilled in exacting terms with Antiochus Epiphanes. Then along comes Jesus in Matthew 24, 15 to 22, and Jesus says, "So when you see the abomination and desolation spoken of Daniel the prophet standing in a holy place, when you see future, Let the reader understand, and let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let one who is on the housetop not go down in and take what is in the house. Let the one who is in his field not turn back and take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be a great tribulation, such as never been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And in those days, if those days had not been cut short, no human being would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days are cut short. Okay? And so that didn't happen with Antiochus Epiphanes, right? This is clearly future to him. And Jesus is pointing ourselves to a future event. Now, we saw some hints of an eschatological end times thing in the Bible prophecy, but Jesus took away all doubts. If you had any doubt that he's talking about a great tribulation never been from the beginning. And I don't see that as being the sacking, the siege of Jerusalem by Rome from the around 66 to 70 AD. It was about a 3.5 year period where Rome really did it, that ended up with the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And I don't see that totally fulfilled in that period, although it is clearly another type of an abomination that makes desolate, correct? You can see how it's a type, but it's not ultimately the fulfillment of it. And sorry, I lost my place here. Now we're going to go on. There's a lot of meat here, and I'm trying to get through this for you. And the king shall do as he wills, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. And he shall speak astonishing things as against the God of gods. He shall prosper till the indignation is accomplished. For what is decreed shall be done. He shall pay no attention to the gods of his fathers, or the one beloved by women. He shall pay no attention to any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. Now, many of these attributes do apply to Antiochus, right? But most commentators think Daniel is just shifted to the Antichrist, right? In 2 Thessalonians, Paul, right, 2:4 talks about the Antichrist who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, and he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. In Revelation 13:5, this is the Apostle John, and the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months, right? The most debated portion of this thing is who's the one beloved by women. Some people try to make that Jesus, right? I think the context makes more sense that this is one of the pagan deities, like either Adonis or Tammuz, and he's just signaling them out, that even the deities in his own land, in his own nation, he doesn't pay attention to. Right? And then 38 and 39, he shall honor the God of fortresses. Instead of these, a God whom his fathers did not know. He shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He shall deal with the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. And those who acknowledge him, he shall load with honor, and he shall make rulers over many, and shall divide their land for a price. This seems to describe a person who's going to spend an enormous amount of money on weaponry, right? And people who try to identify the USA as the beast, the final kingdom, look at our army and our spending on military and other attributes and say, yeah, we are Babylon. We're the mystery Babylon. But you're going to have a similarity here. He will also use giving wealth and political rule to bring allies to rally behind him. You've seen even our country do this all the time. We make people wealthy if they do what we want, right? You get along with that. This is how power is wielded. And that's why another reason why they go, no, yeah, the USA is Mystery Babylon. I don't agree with that, but a lot of their points make sense, right? And then 40 to 45. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him. The king of the north shall rush upon him like a wind, and the chariots and the horsemen with many ships. And he shall come into the countries and shall overflow and pass through. And he shall come into the glorious land, and 10,000 shall fall, but these shall be delivered out of his hand. Edom, Moab, and the main part of the Ammonites. Okay? He shall stretch out his hand against countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. And he shall become the ruler and the treasures of gold or silver, and all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans, and the Cushites. Cush is Ethiopia. Shall follow in his train, but news from the east and the north shall alarm him. He shall go out in a great fury and destroy and devote many to destructions. And he shall pitch his palatial tents between the sea and the glorious mountain, that's Zion. And he shall come into his end, and none will help him. So we've already identified the king of the south. That's Egypt. We know the king of the north is the Seleucid Empire. This is Iran, Iraq, Syria, a lot of nations that go up in there into the steppes of Russia, right? Turkey, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine. That's all part of the king of the north territory. Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, all part of the king of the north. So we know where they are biblically. We don't have to guess. The Bible has told us where the locations are of the king of the north and the king of the south. So while Antiochus Epiphanes, right, described in Daniel, or Antiochus, the fourth, described in Daniel 11:21-35, serves a type or a shadow of the Antichrist. The detailed actions in verses 36 to 45, such as his death in the Holy Land, surpassed the historical record of Antiochus, leading many scholars to transition to the Antichrist. And I think correctly that they see Daniel as he was talking about a historical figure, and then he just jumps across time to an Antichrist. Because the kingdom of Antichrist is described as the feet of iron and clay, and this is where I'm going to give you an idea that you probably haven't heard much. Below the legs, remember the metal structure, the head of gold, the chest and arms of silver, the belly of bronze, and the legs of iron, and the feet of iron and clay. The feet of iron and clay are the Antichrist. If the legs of iron are Rome, and everybody agrees of that, Rome had two capitals, one in Rome and one in Constantinople, currently Istanbul. All right? It was later, it was Byzantium, got renamed Constantinople, is now Istanbul. So it's been a Greek colony since 657 BC, right? In 330 AD, it became renamed Constantinople. When Rome fell in AD 476, the Roman Empire continued under Constantinople until AD 1453. The territories controlled by the king of the north were part of the Roman Empire controlled under Constantinople. Well, wait a second. Now we got one of the feet of the Roman Empire in the same territory that is described by the king of the north here in this thing. I think it helps us identify where the Antichrist is coming from. If we agree Daniel 11:40-45 is describing the Antichrist, then it seems to associate him with a territory controlled by the king of the north, which are modern Syria, Iraq, Iran, stretching into parts of Turkey, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan, and Pakistan. Now, he carves out of Jordan, Edom, Moab, and the greater part of the Ammonites. That's mostly Jordan. So Jordan, I think we can exclude from here. The first war described involves the Antichrist being attacked by the king of the south, Egypt. When he defeats Egypt, two other countries are named as being conquered. Egypt and the Libyans and the Cushites. That sounds very similar to Daniel 7:8, where it says, "And I considered the little horns, and behold, there came up one among the other horn, a little one, which before him 3 horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in the horn were eyes, and the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things." When Libya was part of the Roman Empire, right? But Cush was not. But I don't know that the 10 horns, that it has to be an exactly part of the empire. But just that similarity caught my eyes. That when we got Daniel 11 talking about taking out, this ancient story of what happened with Egypt and Libya and Cush. And if we're applying it to the end times, suddenly your end times first battle maybe involve these very same areas. And I just put up a cartoony map I found. I didn't find a real good at map, but this was clear. At least you can see. See how big the Seleucid Empire, right? Ptolemy's down there in Egypt. And then you got, Lysimachus takes a good part of in between there, and Cassander goes back and takes over Greece, basically. And the whole chapter 11 is about the king of the north and the king of the south. And if this is prophetic about the Antichrist, and you compare that to the Roman Empire, and you're going to find that a good portion of the Roman Empire is covered by covers the same territory that were covered by the king of the north and the king of the south. So why couldn't the revived Roman Empire that's talked about in Revelation, or what we think is the revived Roman Empire with the feet of iron and clay, be a Middle Eastern centered empire? I think it can. Okay. So, clearly I'm still streaming. I see my face on Foxhole and stuff. My restream is completely blank. Okay. It's like a spinning wheel over there. So if you're new here, I typically teach, then I put on a song and I'll go try to read the chats. Hopefully the chats are still working. And I will come back here and talk to you after the song. And we will we'll land this plane in a minute. But I'll be back in just a second. Let me just do the shorter version. It needs to. Here we go.
You will never leave. You are take me home. You were all I ever need. Jesus, you set me free. I will worship you alone. You will come to take me home. I fall down on my knees. I will bless the Lord. I lift my hands to Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Fall down on my knees. I will bless the Lord.
Okay, so I didn't see any questions to answer. So Michael's kicking off. Any of you got to get out of here. I understand that. But today was a good lesson why you need to have me on multiple platforms. My understanding is Rumble was glitchy. Foxhole, the pill.net, the little comfy bunker was working good. I don't know what's going on X, but it seemed like it was working. And if you have multiple places where you can listen, or YouTube, if it's not working on one platform, just shift. It's easy. And like I said, if you're new here, I started out as Donahue Papa, and I was on Clout Hub and DLive, and I joined Rumble and X, all under that name. And I'm Donahue Papa because that's how I'm known in my family. I'm one of the grandpas. You got too many papas, and I'm Donahue Papa. But then when I went to Pill, they messed up that account and became Bill Donahue over there. And when I finally went to YouTube, I couldn't get anything I wanted, right? So we're over there on YouTube as Discerning Truth 534. And so it's good, and I'm glad to be there. I will be with Neo on Friday morning. You're going to get a double dose of Donahue. I'll be with Neo in the morning and at 10:15 a.m. Central Time, which, if you want to know, that's 6:15 for me in the morning. And then I'll be here at noon Pacific Time on Friday, and we're going to talk about a view of the inerrancy of Scripture. And it's not really inerrancy, but it's a view that Peter Enns holds. And I just thought it was an interesting view, and I wanted to learn more about it. And I'll tell you what I think he gets right and what I think he gets wrong. And he may get a lot more wrong than he gets right, but we'll discuss it. If you like my notes, hopefully you do, because I put them up a lot. I'll create a PDF when I go off the air. I'm going to upload it on Discerning Truth Groups on Telegram. You can download my notes. Nothing I do is behind a paywall. You can take my notes and use them for your own study. All that history, nerdy stuff, good to have at hand, right? And then if you want to watch it again on replay, this will be on Rumble. Underneath Donahue Papa, there's a channel called Old Testament Books. It'll be there. And then on YouTube, which I have more fluidity that I can work with, I created my own playlist called Daniel. It'll be in the book of Daniel, and you can look at them there. So with that, I'm going to get out of here and not step on Michael, because I stepped all over his program last week, and I don't like doing that. But with that, I'm gonna go, and God willing, I will see you all on Friday.
Holy down.